Hello, everybody, and welcome to the WREVA Electrifying News segment for January 2022. With me, as usual, we have Mr. Eric Stevens joining us from the Listowel area. How are you today, sir?
I'm doing fantastic, Mark.
Very good, very good. We've got Ian is gracing our presence. He's not in Mexico. He is cold like us. He is here in downtown Kitchener. How are you today, sir?
Not doing too bad. Cold as all of us are, and wishing I was back in Mexico.
Exactly.
Don't worry.
I'm sure you could fill a number of planes with the people that would like to be in Mexico, Ian. There's
Yes.
no question there.
Exactly.
But yeah, it's been frigid temperatures here at the end of January, as I'm sure all of you watching this video are aware. But we thought we would throw you some electrifying news and maybe brighten your day to take a view as to what we see going around locally, as well as regionally and country-wise as well. So with that, let's get Ian to fire up the PowerPoint presentation. And we'll get right into it.
Okay, our first story is about Toronto and Hamilton area are getting new EV chargers, and a little bit of money put into this too.
Yeah, like this seems to be a reoccurring story. And it seems to be coming out, I would say, about once every 3 weeks or so. We see some sort of announcement about a few hundred chargers being installed in a certain region in Ontario. Toronto, even KW from our last, I believe, electrifying news. This story, of course, is indicating the Golden Horseshoe in Toronto area and another 294 chargers. What was interesting is that they didn't identify any actual areas. They indicated where they're going to be installed, such as public places, multi-unit residential buildings, on streets, which is kind of interesting, workplaces or facilities servicing light-duty vehicle fleets. But there was no real, in concrete, here are a number of locations that are going to be happening. They did indicate that they should all be up and running by December of 2022. So basically giving them a year to get them in place and operational. They also indicated that there was going to be some sort of a transparent, I guess, selection process for where these are going. So I would imagine that some sort of a website is going to be put up where you could suggest, and of course, the regions and municipalities within the Golden Horseshoe probably will be directed to send them some input as to where they believed in their certain areas they would like these chargers. But again, it's a thing that's happening often, and it just seems to continue flowing, that we're getting more and more chargers. I'm just hoping that they are placed strategically. If they're going to be level 2s, they need to be in places where people are going to spend an hour or 1 to 2 hours, somewhere in that area. 45 minutes to 2 hours would be ideal for an L2 charger, compared to a fast charger, of course. Trying to bridge communities, being able to travel that key 100 miles is the total amount between chargers. So hopefully all these chargers, there is a plan behind all of them together so that it benefits the entire network.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I believe these come from the Government of Canada has an EV infrastructure fund, and a number of different regions have applied for funding for this. So that I think that these announcements are just sort of coinciding to when the plans sort of get released for these different regions and the different applicants get accepted. I think this is a great thing. I mean, especially in a city like Toronto, because one of the big things that people always talk about is, okay, people in homes can charge at home, but what about if you live in apartments or condos or things like that as well too? So urban charging and that type of system certainly helps people in those types of environments make vehicle electrification more accessible to them. And it works great for people who have to drive into Toronto occasionally to find charging as well too. So,
yeah, it's interesting. I think too that it's just through Greater Toronto and Hamilton. And is this going to then, of course, start to expand slowly up Burlington to the Tri-Cities, and for that matter, on the other side with Whitby, Pickering, and so on. But like Eric, like you mentioned, that's the first thing that caught my eye was the multi-unit residential buildings. And the other thing too is I hope that when they put these in, that they make sure that they maintain them. Because I have a friend who will go visit her dad in Port Elgin area. And funny enough, there's 8 chargers there for the building that he's in. They are not turned on. They don't work. And she's talked to the building supervisors like, okay, when's this actually being turned on? When is this happening? So I hope, that the government will at least have some sort of follow-up and surveillance, I guess you could say, that all of these things are working. Maybe something simple, phone number, hey, this charger's not working, that type of stuff. But
they could even use something like PlugShare, Ian, if they just wanted to sample what's been going on in a certain charger.
Yes.
Being able to use PlugShare as a resource to say, oh, there seems to be a problem at this particular one.
Yeah.
That would even give them the ability to crowdsource it a bit, even though they might have to go into more detail to get it fixed. But it's a great idea.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, and on streets, why not? Because, hey, we're going to charge you for parking, especially Toronto. You want to charge? Sure, you can charge as well. It'll be $1.50 an hour if it's level 2, usually the average cost. But now you're kind of getting 2 things going with that. So So no, I think this is great, and the amount 294 is, to me, it seems like a pretty good number that they're getting in here.
Yeah, decent number, and it'd be interesting to see what provider they use. If they, historically, a lot of these funds have been going to like Flow seems to be one of the big popular partners for these. Sometimes ChargePoint. So
yeah. So. All right. So Ivy, OnRoute Canadian Tire, talking about adding more charging stations. And this is one that I think we have heard so many times. I think all 3 of us have heard is like, why aren't they at the OnRoute locations? It seems like the right spot to do this. So here we go.
Yeah, finally, everybody for a long time, and for a long time they were announcing that. I think there were signs up saying EV charging is coming, and that was like several years ago. And I think for a long time, part of the issue was Canadian Tire controlled the automotive services, and then OnRoute was sort of subcontracted, and there's all sorts of sort of red tape and who would be responsible for them. But I think finally now, with Ivy being largely a government run through Hydro One and Ontario Power Generation, and OnRoute being a provincial sawn by the provincial governments, and then now Ivy having close ties with Canadian Tire in a lot of locations as well too, and Canadian Tire getting into more EV charging. I think finally they've gotten something to work out. And so finally, we're getting chargers being put into a lot of these locations, and they're going in fast. They've announced this partnership, but it looks like this partnership's been in the works for some time, because a lot of these chargers have already been installed. They just haven't been powered on yet. I personally, a month ago in December, stopped at the Cambridge OnRoutes, both east and westbound, and they had 4 DC fast chargers there, and their press release says there's charging speeds up to 150 kilowatt, but the units that they're installing are capable of 350. So I guess in the future, if the service was there, they could probably upgrade those units.
Mm-hmm. Now, is it just level 3, but are they considering level 2 as well?
These are just DC fast charging units.
Yeah, and Chatamo CCS?
Yes.
On both, yeah.
Both, yes.
Yeah. Okay. So for, those of us who drive the Tesla, we'll have to probably get an adapter. We do have the CHAdeMO adapter, but yeah.
Yeah, there was some talk of them putting possibly even a Tesla adapter on some of these units, but that so far doesn't seem to be happening. But
Yeah, I'm kind of waiting to hear on that part of it too. But either way, this is just awesome to see that we're building this out. And, the 41400 series is definitely a route that I think so many of us have been, crying for. Like, this makes sense to put this in here.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's even some.
Sorry, go ahead, Eric.
Go ahead, Mark. I was just going to say there's the known charging desert, I would say, between like London and Chatham.
Yes.
And there's a service center there at Dutton that services the east and westbound 401. That's a perfect spot for DC fast charging.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like I think they have indicated they're going to put them at all OnRoutes. It's just going to take some longer time for certain ones. And I understand that there is a power service issue at certain OnRoutes that are in extreme rural locations where they can't pull enough power. So they're looking at what they're going to have to do. Is it going to be a battery bank? Are they going to have to pay for an upgraded service? Is it even available? So they want to put them at all of them, but as Eric has mentioned, that they have started placement as soon as they announced this. They were already in place at a number of OnRoutes. So we'll have to check the IV app or the website, and you'll be able to see when they start coming online. I believe that that's going to be this spring for a number of them.
Cool.
Yep.
All right. Well, keep an eye out for that spring, that word that I think all of us are waiting for.
Yeah.
January's still not even over. Oh. All right. So we, of course, in Ontario had something recently happen about a week ago from this past Monday, where we had quite the weather of snow and people, where they shut down the in Toronto, the Gardiner and but I-95 in the States, of course, had a huge lineup and people basically in their cars for hours upon hours. And there was an op-ed that was put out by Charles Lane at the Washington Post, and his big thing was that if this was electric vehicles, it would just litter the highway for miles, as he said. His thing was that the electric vehicles, the power consumption, they would have lasted only a few hours, and then now how do we get them off the roads, because we got to tow them to charging stations, etc. So I shot back myself a few emails to him, and next thing you know, a few other people were doing the same. We almost became a little bit of a group. But this person, and we'll have the links, of course, where you can you see this op-ed that responded to Charles Lane. And he was in a Model 3 standard range, and he, said he had no problems running his electric vehicle for, I think in his case, was over 12 hours. And he makes a really good point about the fact that, compared to most gas drivers who might fill up once a week, and every time they leave the home, their consumption is just going down and down and down, and they don't wake up in the morning like electric vehicle drivers do with a full battery. And basically you're going to have the dwindling gas that way. And the other thing too is it's the efficiency aspect with the EV. The battery power is not being put to the wheels, and a gas vehicle, of course, it's the same thing. It's not putting the energy to the wheels, but gas just runs power, and it's not really regulated the best way like an EV is. And of course, he also brings up the fact that we're not getting all the pollutions from gas-powered vehicles. Where a lot of people, they're in their car, their engine's running, but they still have a very good chance of carbon monoxide poisoning. And then he makes an interesting comment of, lastly, of the gas vehicles are also what are contributing to this extreme weather as well. So it was an interesting, that this happened in the States, and then suddenly we got it here in Ontario. And I can say, a friend sent me recently a post from one of his Facebook friends, and it was the exact same thing, and the commentary was ridiculous. So I was, responding back to some of these things, and it was all the same arguments. All they only last a few hours, if that, and etc.
Yeah, I'm thinking this is kind of like a human psychology thing. Is they're looking at this and they're applying what I call a gas vehicle owner mentality, and then they're superimposing that onto EVs without thinking about how an EV actually works.
Mm-hmm.
And they're looking at this and they're thinking, well, I'm sitting here in traffic with a gas engine idling, and I'm going to be consuming a ton of energy. But and they think, well, if I was in an EV, that would be worse. But an EV doesn't use any energy while it's sitting, except for the HVAC system, the heating system. And the heating system in an EV is going to be using 1.5 to 2 kilowatts to keep the cabin warm under those environments. Well, if you have a 60 kilowatt hour battery pack, that's like 30 hours of runtime you can run in an EV, and that's under those circumstances. So yeah, it's not really that big of a concern. And then of course in an EV too, if you had to conserve energy for whatever reason, you could just run your heated seats and your heated steering wheel, and you could probably stay fairly comfortable, and then you could probably last for days in that environment.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. If you thought you were needed to reduce energy, going to the heated seat certainly would keep you warm enough, but conserve a lot of energy, because that's a huge difference between a radiant heater and your heated seat. It's an education thing. People just don't realize how these things work. And Ian's point, of course, is valid as well, that most EV owners plug their cars in at night and they leave the garage with a full charge, whereas gas drivers typically run the tank dry, may take a week, head to the gas station, fill up again. Well, guess what? If this was the day before you filled up, you're in a lot of trouble sitting in a 12-hour backlog of traffic if you're in a gas car.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I wonder how many wives were on the cell phone with the husband saying, "I told you should have got gas." This argument, I see it all over the place, and it's again, over time, it just, the proof's in the pudding. And like Eric made a point, there's some math for you. 60 kilowatt battery, you use 1 to 2 kilowatts to keep warm. Yeah, 30 hours. I'd hope that your traffic jam be done by 30 hours.
Yeah.
Because at that point, I'd be trying to plug something in electrically to make soup at that point to to eat. All right. So if you are planning to purchase an electric vehicle, you might be having some wait time here. And now, a lot of this, of course, we've been hearing about the semiconductor chips shortages, and the pandemic's affected us quite a bit. So
we've got a situation where we've got supply chain issues, and of course, previous to the supply chain being broken up somewhat, we were in a situation where there weren't a lot of EVs sitting on dealership lots anyways. They were, in a lot of cases, you had to pre-order an EV in order to get it, outside a few certain EV dealerships or that are EV friendly that had a few on the lot. But in typical fashion, you would have to pre-order. Now we're at a point going into 2022 where, with the supply chain issue compounded by the chip shortages and other problems that they've had, 2022 is going to be a tough year to get an EV as well. So just a warning to those of you out there that are wanting to get an EV. My suggestion would be, get your order in early and be prepared to wait a number of months because that seems to be what is happening now. In fact, it's across the board from all manufacturers. So it's and the popular EVs, those ones are even taking longer because, of course, there's a larger queue line. So you need to know that if your plan is to pick up a vehicle, say in spring, if your order isn't in currently, you're in for a bit of a wait. So if you're thinking about summer or fall, my suggestion would be get that order in now and be prepared for a bit of a wait. Now, all of us here being multiple EV owners, will tell you the wait is worth it. But for someone that's coming from a gas car and is used to just going to a lot and picking out a color that's on the lot of a vehicle and then driving home with it, that's not going to be the case for EVs for quite some time, and certainly not in 2022. So just a kind of an alert to people as to what you expect when purchasing an EV from a dealership in 2022.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think right now with the supply chain, even my company and our products are right now having major supply chain issues in many cases. It's been a very difficult ride to deal with that. And even in the automotive industry, all vehicles today, you're trying to purchase certain vehicles today. There's a few exceptions out there, but for the most part, the average wait time for any new car today is 3 to 4 months. And EVs, of course, have been somewhat exacerbated, especially by higher fuel costs and more people becoming aware of products. And there's a lot of new EVs hitting the market now. So there's a lot of new products that are starting to hit the market. Ian there's got the Ioniq 5, which I just test drove myself a couple weeks ago. Incredibly impressive vehicle, but at the time, the Schluter Hyundai in Waterloo was telling me 7-month wait for the all-wheel drive version and a 3-month wait for the rear drive long-range version. So yeah, definitely a wait for some of these vehicles, and yeah. But through 2022, it's going to be a bit of a slew for a bit as well too. But auto manufacturers now are also, and you're starting to see this now too, are starting to structure their supply chains to be a bit more secure, and they're starting to take this into account. So they're putting measures in place to fix this, but they're not a quick fix.
Yeah. So
in a lot of cases, we're going to see supply chain issues fixed, but it probably won't be until 2023 before we start to see fruits of that labor.
Right. And, interesting enough, we found out too yesterday, just as an example, the Cybertruck, which many of us were kind of curious that we might see this year, is now looking to be 2023. And again, they hold their cards close to their chest. Is that supply chain issues? Is that, other, engineering issues? Who knows? But I saw a dealer post that they had an Ioniq 5 in Toronto available, and the person who originally purchased it, actually they backed out. They didn't say why. I mean, we don't know what that story is. But I would almost guarantee that the minute he posted that they probably sold within a couple hours or more, or like somebody went there and said, "Yeah, I'll take it."
Yeah. Right now, Ioniq 5s, if you have a keen eye and you know where to look, you can find some.
Mm-hmm.
But they're a little bit hard because Hyundai has been shipping quite a few of them.
Mm-hmm.
Last I heard, there was a dealership in Etobicoke that had 5 of them on the lot that weren't sold.
Mm-hmm.
So, mind you, that was also 2 weeks ago, which has probably drastically changed since then. But
yeah, but a great, I've been seeing the reviews. Great vehicle.
Oh, I absolutely. I love the driving it. It was fantastic. Very spacious, very well thought out, and quite the prices which you get for the money is very good.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So an interesting kind of looking vehicle as well, especially with the headlights.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, it's in terms of just the having to wait. I also saw somebody basically put a down payment on an Ioniq 5 and I think the Kia as well, and just said, whichever one comes in first, I'll take it.
Yeah, the EV6 pricing isn't out yet, but I'm keen to see that one as well too.
Yeah, I think it was the EV6 that, yeah, I'm pretty sure that. So, all right, well, let's move along here to something in Canada here, company that has been around for quite a long time.
Yeah. Yeah, Steelco is a company. Their primary business is making steel, and steel refining and stuff like that. But they have a side business where they do recycle metals and minerals as well too. And they're working with a company in Europe. I believe they're a German company, and they're using their process and their technology basically to incorporate that into their recycling facility here in Ontario to allow them to recycle EV batteries and get those minerals back out and recycle them as well too. So it's good to see a legacy company, older company that has worked in steel and recycled minerals, and now seeing EV batteries. This is one more step to becoming mainstream, basically.
Mm-hmm. And also too, I think it's it'll be interesting to see if some of their process that they do with steel will be transferred to the whole battery recycling as well, or at least experimented with. I'm sure they will be doing stuff like that as well. And the fact that this is just yet another company that we've talked about on our podcast that is doing battery recycling. So we talked about Li-ion, so it's just great to see. And again, it puts to rest the myth about, well, batteries, they end up in landfills and et cetera, and that is not the case at all. This is definitely a business model that's very valid, and it makes sense. Like, why, we don't just throw away steel either, so.
Yeah, and that the more of these that come online, the better. Obviously, with the start of the EV movement, or the modern EV movement, a lot of those vehicles are now somewhere between, I would say, 10 and 10, 11 years old that started this. Those a number of those cars are still on the road with the same batteries they have in them, but there are a few that are starting to get to the end of their life cycle. I'm looking at you, Nissan Leaf, with the air-cooled battery. There's a few of them that had some issues, but with that said, having more and more options where they can be recycled is going to be key. As the volume starts to increase, I would say in the next 5 to 10 years, when those first gen cars are done, or when their useful battery life has peaked 18, 20 years. So more of these type facilities are going to be required, and certainly mining the minerals that are already in those batteries. A lot easier than mining it out of an open pit mine. You're able to get to those minerals quickly, and having a good process in place is going to allow these companies to do so, and sell them back to be made into new batteries. So certainly looking forward to more of these type operations starting up.
Yeah, for sure. So speaking of battery technology, this is something too that I'm always curious, intrigued when some of these new companies to a certain point that are coming out with not just about, we have a new battery technology, we're trying lithium insert whatever here, but what they're doing to actually enhance the battery. And StoreDot is doing something interesting, where basically, once your battery goes to a certain point, in most cases, then it does this drop off, and it's got a certain capacity to it, but it just starts to drop off. And StoreDot is actually showing that once they get to 80%, that they can still maintain it to around 70% and keep the cycles going. And of course, because of this technology that they're using, it's again not necessarily for a car, but they're going back to energy storage and grid load balancing systems. One other thing too was I did see another article where they were showing how when the lithium ions go from, I'm not sure if it's anode to cathode or cathode to anode. I apologize. My science knowledge on that is not quite sure what direction that is, but the lithium ions, a certain percentage of them can get trapped. And so hence why we then only have, say, 80% capacity after a certain point. And this company was showing how they can potentially untrap these so that they flow back so that they can be, charged up again on this. So it's great to see that, StoreDot's been around for a little while. And I'm just curious to, over time, to see this technology evolve, and again, kind of, it almost makes it seem like this is a whole other recycling area that we're getting into. Again, with the whole oil and gas industry, there's not a lot of recycling, especially when you're burning it in a combustion engine. So with something like this, it's great that we can, like Steelco, recycle the batteries and reuse them, but then we have a company like this which can maintain the battery even that much longer.
Yeah, I think we're in a day and age now where people are seeing electrification coming, and so a lot of businesses now are investing in R&D projects towards battery technology. So we're seeing now literally hundreds of innovations happening every year, and a percentage of those are making them their way into the electric vehicle industry. So certainly we're going to see continued innovation on many different levels that will be incorporated into many technologies that will evolve batteries on a continuous basis going forward, improving their performance, improving their life, reducing their cost. All those things are all going to happen, and they're going to happen in a very continuous fashion.
Mm-hmm. All right. So this is something, especially during the wintertime, where brakes are actually used somewhat more in wintertime because the regenerative with the cold isn't quite used the same way. It's a little bit different when we get the cold in.
Yeah. This was prompted by an email that we received here at WREVA from one of our members, Bart, who had indicated that he has a daughter that has a late model 2017 Bolt EV, and had the car, bought it used, I guess, had it for about 12 months, took it to their dealership of choice, and discovered that the brakes were less than optimal. They had rusted, the rotors had rusted, the pads had been rusted to the rotor. There were some issues, especially on the inside of the rotor compared to the external pad, but ended up having to have a brake job done on the car, not because the brakes were used, but because of lack of use and rusting issues that had happened on the pads themselves, and of course transferred to the rotors as well. So his question was, what should electric vehicle owners look at when they're looking at their brakes? What should be done about them? Obviously, having a vehicle that you could have a set of pads for the lifetime of the vehicle is not much good if they still have to be replaced because of damage from rusting has happened. So I thought we would bring this up and discuss a little bit, because I know some of us had some brake issues in the past. And I guess I want to start with the most, I guess, easiest thing is that you're right, your pads may last forever, but the maintenance on the braking system still has to be performed. So if you own an EV, depending on how quickly that rust starts to build up, I would suggest that having a brake cleaning should be done once a season. Again, depending on how much you're noticing a buildup is happening. So most EVs at this point have the rotor and brakes in that fashion. Looking through the wheel to see what's going on in there should be something that you're checking maybe every spring and every fall, just kind of looking at things, assessing it, and then take it to a professional if you can't do it on your own, and have them do a good cleaning and lubing of the parts, because that maintenance is going to help you. And you don't want to be doing this in the winter. You don't want to be doing it on the day like it is today. You want to do it in the spring or fall. Make that your regular thing that you're checking and then taking it to a professional. I can get away with it on my vehicles, it seems, about every 18 months. But your results may differ depending on how much you drive, whether your car sits in a garage and warms up or not, those type of things. So that's an easy one, but I wanted to talk to both Eric and Ian and see what their experience has been with EV brakes.
Yeah, that's and then that's a good question and a good comment on that too. I mean, and a lot of EVs today, and a lot of people even have the perception that, you know, because regenerative braking actually works different in a lot of different EVs. And there's a lot of EVs out there where they think, well, if I just touch the brake pedal, it uses the brakes. Well, a lot of EVs out there today, like especially like the Bolt EV, which Bart uses, is a car that is actually always trying to regen no matter what you do. If you push the regen pedal, you push the brake pedal, you push whatever, it's always regenning, always. And it only engages the friction brakes if you try to slow down beyond a certain threshold. So in that case, that it's very easy to go into a situation that if you're braking softly in a car like that, trying to drive efficiently, you might not use the brakes at all or very little in that situation. So it is a very good idea to, as Mark said, get your brakes serviced once a year, and typically they'll go through and clean and lubricate your calipers, because especially the calipers, they can stick when they're not used for a period of time. And then, of course, the rotors can rust as well, too. And a good little trick that I do is about every couple of weeks, when I have some time, if I go on a nice little back road, I'll speed up to about 80 kilometers an hour, put the car in neutral, and neutral will disable the regeneration and hit the brakes. And then I'll actually use the friction brakes to help clean the rotors and stuff like that as well, too, especially in the wintertime. I'll do that to help clean the rotors and stuff like that. And it's something I do maybe every couple of weeks, maybe when I'm going to the grocery store or something like that. And I've got a nice little back quiet road. I can do something like that. Do a relatively moderate hard stop in neutral just to clean those rotors. But yeah, getting a brake service done about once a year is a good idea to keep your brakes in good working order and working. Yeah.
I like that put it in neutral idea. I didn't know about that. That's actually totally makes sense. That's a cool little idea. So I, of course, I travel, especially when the warm weather hits. I go from Kitchener about 5.5, 6 hours north to the cabin, and it really adds up a lot of kilometers on my car. Of course, I'm nowhere close to some of our other friends who are like over 200,000 on their EVs, but I'm over 104,000 now. But when I got my tires changed for winter, my mechanic friend, he looked at my rotors and he's like, I'm pretty sure you're gonna need new rotors next spring, because my rotors actually showed grooves and everything that was going on. So it was kind of a bit of I was like surprised at first, but yeah, it's it's not a lifetime thing that we won't ever have to do a brake job. And the other thing too is when I get the winter tires put on, is there's a pin that I get popped out, and it gets lubed up, so it doesn't seize as well. And I couldn't tell you, again, I'm not sure what the name of the pin is. I want to say caliper pin, but I could be just saying whatever because I think I heard that before. But and the last thing too is the brake fluid is something that a lot of people think, the brake fluid's in there and don't have to worry about it. But brake fluid actually absorbs water, and over time, the articles I was reading is that brake fluid, you do want to get that changed because you could be having water in the system because it absorbs that, and of course that then also leads to the rust aspect as well. So another thing just to kind of keep in mind on that.
Yeah, check your owner's manual for brake fluid changes. That will be listed in the owner's manual as to what the frequency should be. One other question I wanted to put to the both of you is, have you heard about new rotors or pads or calipers that are specially designed for EVs because of some of these situations? Is there such a thing, or is it just a marketing ploy that doesn't really exist out there?
I haven't heard of that myself.
I have, yeah. So I've seen some companies out there that are marketing rotors with different types of coatings or even different types of anodization processes that sort of slow the corrosion process. And some of them seem to work quite well. Some of them seem to be more of a gimmick. So some of them have put like a surface coating on, but once you use your brakes a certain period of time, it kind of burns through that coating, and it's basically a typical rotor. But I've seen some that have actually done like an anodization to the rotors that do actually can extend the life 2 or even 3 times of your rotor as well, to can slow the corrosion rate down and reduce the amount of pitting to those. So I've seen a few companies do stuff like that out there.
It's interesting because how much more are these rotors as well? So yeah, they might extend it another 2 times, but then if you're paying twice the price. And I think there's something to be said about maybe having that kind of consistent looking at it to make sure everything's okay. Where if the other rotors are on and you kind of forget about it because it's that much longer, when are you going to put that into your calendar to check on things as well?
Yeah, you might want to work it into, as I do, with the changing between summer and winter tires.
Yeah.
That becomes the ideal place. Since the tires are coming off anyways, a good examination at that point, or if you're taking it into a shop to have it done, it's already on the hoist, the tire's already off. Now it's time, to spend the money to do that cleaning or that replacement of parts that's required. But I think out of the 3 of us, the main thing here is to have that yearly look and maintenance of those brakes. And secondly, I love Eric's idea about just every couple of weeks, especially during the sloppy months, make sure that you go out and you use the physical pads just to clean the surface off, rub the rotors and the calipers together, and do that a few times every couple weeks, and that should allow a little bit less corrosion to build up on both the rotor and the calipers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. So we have a new road in Canada that's going to a cobalt mine.
Yeah, so this is a company, Fortune Minerals. They're a relatively new company, and they've built there's an all new road that's going out to a town of Wahiti. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. It's up in the Northwest Territories, about 160 kilometers northwest of Yellowknife, and there they found large deposits of quite a few different minerals. So this mine does copper, cobalt, gold, and bismuth. And they say this is a really good thing because the prices of minerals can fluctuate sometimes wildly at different times. So it's sometimes very hard to come up with a good economic, solid, long-term case for certain mines. Because there's always a concern that if you start mining one mineral and then the price tanks, then your business model's gone. Well, here they're mining 4 different minerals. And, if the business case of one drops out, well, the other 3 will likely carry it still. So what's also good about this is in this particular case, they are mining cobalt. And, there's, today, the world's largest cobalt manufacturer for countries is the Democratic Republic of the Congo and Africa. And of course, there's always concerns about ethical supply chain and stuff like that as well, too. While there are companies that work in the Congo that do things properly. And most automotive manufacturers usually are pretty good at having a secure supply chain, making sure they use companies that do have ethical practices. There is, of course, unethical cobalt that is also being mined, and it's sometimes hard to track where that gets into the system and where that's used. So there's a chance that if you have a cell phone manufactured in a less than developed country, that it might be from less than ethical cobalt in that battery. But now having a source of cobalt here in Canada and in North America is a great thing going forward. Again, to help secure supply chains, and we know that this is going to be ethically sourced and done properly.
Yeah, certainly having additional supply in Canada bodes well for Canada itself as well as these individual communities. It will be a plus to bring this mine online and start to supply because obviously the need of having more and more batteries is going to require more and more minerals. So it's certainly something that we could see can be a benefit to the community, and of course being a benefit to the North American market as a whole.
Mm-hmm. I think, yeah, this being close to home, and it's going to give some other opportunities, for the communities that way. And there's also always has been, especially electric vehicles, the big argument about cobalt and the ethical aspect of it. But funny enough, the people that argue that also seem to argue that on their electronic devices, which also uses cobalt, which could also be from, as Eric mentioned, unethical, companies. So this is great to see, and the fact also that you have not just one mineral but four. So if one's not doing quite as well, you're kind of propped up by the other ones. This will definitely be very useful to helping keep that mine going. And I think it's going to be a win for the community up there as well. Because that road, it's meant for, connecting with the mining company and that, but that will lead also to other things as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and even the other elements that they're mining are also used in the EV industry. There's talks of shortages of copper. Gold is becoming more quickly used, and especially in a lot of finite electronics. So yeah, these are elements that are all needed for this transition going forward.
Mm-hmm. All right. So this really got me excited. One of the biggest problems, and not just electric vehicles, but even gas vehicles as well, was when anytime you tow something, you're putting a strain on the engine / motor, and your range, especially in an electric vehicle, is getting compromised. I know that for a fact that when I towed that pontoon boat up, man, did I ever see that range drop. And that 500 kilometers went down really fast, and even that was with trying to be conservative with the going 80 to 85 kilometers an hour and babying everything. It's still, so this is really exciting. And so Thor Industries, which is part of Airstream, and they showed two, one an actual trailer and the other which was more like a Ford Transit van. And the one that got me the most was the actual Airstream, the RV towing wise, because it's helping. And it's funny because this is actually something I've thought of and talked to friends about probably at least 4 years ago. And one friend in mechanical engineering was like, well, it's a cool idea. I'm not sure how feasible it is, because he was trying to apply some physics to it. But the idea is that the trailer has electric motors in it with a battery, and it is able to sense what your tow vehicle is doing to help move it along with you. And of course, one of our podcasts in the past that we recently did, we talked about a company that did something similar that traveled throughout Europe. So this is just yet another, proof of concept that, it'll be interesting to see when they get this out. Price-wise, I can imagine this is going to be well over $100,000+. But the one other thing too that was really cool about this trailer was the fact that you can remotely control it and move it into your spot, which I thought was awesome, because anyone who is towed and then told to, you got to back it in now, and it could even be a small boat. That's a real challenge for anyone who's never done this, because your steering wheel really is the opposite of what you think the trailer will do. Is the opposite on the steering wheel. In fact, somebody told me a little trick is you take your hand, if you put your hand on the top of the steering wheel, you put it on the bottom instead. So if you want it to go to the right, you put your hand on the bottom and you actually turn it to the right or turn it to the left. And the bottom part of the steering wheel is actually the direction of the trailer that you want to go, where when you do it on the top, it messes you up. So, kudos to all the guys who, tow and that can, they know what they're doing with this. So. But I love, and there's solar panels on this on the roof as well. So for those of you wanting to go off grid, this is awesome. I think this is such a great. I'm really hoping to see this thing come out.
Yeah, what I like about it is that most people that are taking a trailer of this size, for example, to a campsite, they're there for a few days or maybe a week for a vacation, and they typically will plug into some sort of utility at the campsite. Okay, most do. Some don't, but most would. What's really nice is that with this having a battery pack in it, you may have spent that battery getting to the campsite, but once you're at the campsite, plugging into the utility there, with that vehicle being there for a few days or a week, you will easily charge that battery up to full amount again and be ready to hit the road on the way home. Or, of course, power other amenities from that vehicle. As battery could be done as well. So it's an easy win, and being able to, as Ian mentioned, have that thing back up into the proper spot or move it a little bit for whatever reason, it becomes an easy thing that you don't even have to hook up your tow vehicle anymore. You can just use your phone app and push it forward a little bit or back it up or shimmy it around. So I'm looking forward to seeing some of these at the local campsites as time goes along.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is a cool concept, and especially for towing vehicles. Again, the idea of having batteries and electric motor in there, in a sense, the trailer can be run as a neutral load. Basically, it can basically subtract out whatever, make it like there's almost no trailer back there, and it would also have a regenerative braking effect too. It could act as a trailer brake controller as well too, that could possibly tie in with the EV. So it could make trailering in some ways even safer as well too. Having, now you could have trailers with stability control and stuff built into it, and you could make trailering much more safer than it is today too.
Mm-hmm. There's supposedly actually on this trailer, they were saying about something to do with curves and wind. There is actually a stability system built into it as well, which will help. Because I think we've all seen those YouTube videos of the driving and the trailer starts to sway one way and then the other way, and the next thing you know, that's like taking the whole car out. Terrible.
Well, that's usually because they didn't load the tongue weight properly. There's a load imbalance in the trailer.
Yeah.
But and a trailer like this too, I mean, there's room for solar panels on the top, which might not 100% power your trip, but it might help, especially if you're parked out somewhere for a week or something like that too.
Yeah, this demonstration model. This
Yeah.
demonstration model had 900-watt solar array on the roof.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's not bad.
Yeah, it seems a little light on the light end for 900 watts, but it also are the flexible solar panels, which don't have quite the same power and efficiency as regular solar panels. So, you know,
Yeah, they weren't your
yeah. Now,
they weren't your 400 plus watts bifacials there, Ian.
Yeah, I know that actually are mechanical and they move out, and yeah. There's actually a couple of guys who I'm forgetting their Instagram account, but they actually have a big van that they have been able to put solar panels on that they float out. One side comes out, the other side comes out, and then it turns and it actually charges their vehicle. Route del Sol, that's what it's called.
Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah.
Yeah, and they've been in Mexico where they somehow the panels got really damaged, and they had Mexican welding shop help them out with putting it all back together. And yeah, there's some interesting stories. But I will say one quick thing too is if I had to make a choice between the Vision vehicle or the Airstream E-Stream concept, I would still take the E-Stream. There's something. The van life is such a big thing, but if you ever want to travel, you're always taking a big van. Where I could see a Model Y towing this, and if you want to get away, you can kind of, so to speak, leave your home, at the campsite, and then take off and go around and stuff like that. So I don't know. There's positives and negatives to either one of them, but I like this towing one. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, and in a vehicle like this, the effective towing weight might be reduced as well too. The trailer might weigh 10,000 pounds, but it might tow like a 1,500 or 2,000 pound trailer.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see. All right, so we finishing off the night with one quick little story, and it's up in Gravenhurst. Gravenhurst, they have this Wanda 3, which was it's one of the few remaining steamships in North America, and originally owned by the Eaton family. And it's now being outfitted with an electric motor from the company Elco, which is the same company that when I did my pontoon boat conversion, used their motor. And but their motor in this steamship is much more powerful. I would imagine. I think it's like 150 horsepower or more on it, and they're hoping to have this thing out by the summer of this year. And it's also got now its own boathouse, and it's staying at the Discovery Center in Muskoka Bay. So that's something actually I think I will might take a little trip for and check out. I think that's going to be interesting little venture.
Nice.
Yeah, that's again another boat turning to electric, similar to what we saw happen at the Maid of the Mist. Although those were brand new boats, not conversions. They were built as electric catamarans down at the Maid of the Mist. But yeah, there's certainly seeing Ian's pontoon boat out on the lakes. Electric is a viable solution for a number of different projects, and this is just proving the case once again.
Yeah, and this is a way to keep costs and maintenance down on these old boats. So these boats are going to require other types of maintenance to keep it on the water, and having that one less thing that requires far less maintenance involved in it will help them take that money to invest it to keep these wonderful boats on the water.
Mm-hmm. Maybe I should, tow down my pontoon boat to Gravenhurst and head out on the water with this guy, and we'll have a little boat race. I think even with the size of it, if he's got the 150 horse, I'll be smoked.
Yeah.
For sure.
Very good. Very good. Well, thank you very much. That's some interesting stories this month. If you're watching us for the first time and haven't done this already, please give us a thumbs up on the video. That helps us out. Press that subscription button, and you will be notified anytime we add a new YouTube to our channel. And you'll be one of the first to be notified of that. And that helps out the channel as well. So we would appreciate you doing so. A little housekeeping. We will probably be back in about another month. We'll do a February edition. We'll see you then again. With that, Ian, any shout outs for this evening?
Nothing really comes to my mind other than hopefully I can do a shout out from Mexico when we do our next podcast. And I'll maybe can give a little view of the to send a little.
Yeah, sure. That'll really help us all out, Ian. That you're a great guy. It shows the view that we can't have.
You can think about it, I can see though, it hopefully won't be one of those things where we do the podcast and you're still back in Canada. So what happened? It's like,
Very good, very good. Eric, any shout outs from you this evening?
Yeah, I think I'll give one shout out to Schluter Hyundai, actually. When I went there to test drive the Hyundai, the salesperson get no pressure tactics at all. Handed me the key to the car and just said, take it for a good test drive. And he let me have the car, basically. Didn't give me a time frame, didn't give me a route or anything, just said, take it, have fun with it. And I certainly did.
Best kind of test drive you can get. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you very much, everyone, for watching. We'll sign off this evening, and we'll see you next month. So once again, thanks very much, and we'll talk to you later. Good night.
Good night.